You two are best friends, huh? He feels safe with you. Good boy, little lady. You okay?
I pulled into the clinic's parking lot just after sunrise, the kind of pale, cold light that makes everything look quieter than it really is. Pumpkin sat in his carrier on the seat beside me, tapping the plastic door with his paw, annoyed that our peaceful morning had been interrupted. He never liked the carrier, but he tolerated it because he trusted me. We were here only for a routine vaccination. In my mind, it was supposed to be a 10-minute errand before work. Inside, the clinic smelled like antiseptic, steel tables, and wet fur. A couple of dogs whimpered from the far side of the waiting room. Pumpkin crouched low, tense but curious, his orange tail flicking through the carrier's holes. I checked in, took a seat, and tried not to think about emails I was already behind on. I didn't mean to overhear anything. I was scrolling through my phone when two voices drifted from the hallway near the treatment rooms. One belonged to Dr. Harper, steady, calm, the kind of voice that makes animals soften the moment she touches them. The other was a man's, rough from long hours outdoors. He said something I didn't fully catch. Then a word cut through the noise of barking and typing at the front desk. Euthanize him tonight. My eyes lifted from the screen. Dr. Harper stepped into view with a clipboard, followed by a tall man in a worn green jacket. His badge read Rick. The look on his face was the same I'd seen on firefighters coming out of burned homes. Resigned, tired, not heartless, but trained to shut certain doors inside themselves. Dr. Harper lowered her voice, but I could still hear bits as they passed the doorway. He's blind, Rick. A young bobcat with zero chance of release. You know how the system works. Rick sighed. We don't have room for a permanent non-releasable. No funding, no staff. I held him as long as I could. I didn't understand why that hit me the way it did. Maybe it was the way he said held, not kept. Maybe it was because Pumpkin let out a small chirp inside the carrier, almost like he sensed tension in the room. Rick disappeared down the hall, pushing a rolling metal crate. Dr. Harper followed. Something inside me tugged hard, and before I could stop myself, I stood and drifted toward the hallway. I stopped when I saw the crate. Inside, curled tight against the far corner, was a small bobcat, young, but already with the muscular frame of a wild predator. His coat was patterned with dark rosettes and faint stripes, beautiful even in the sterile clinic light. His ears twitched constantly, tracking sounds with the precision of something that couldn't rely on sight. His pupils didn't follow movement. His breathing was fast, shallow. He wasn't resting. He was listening for danger. Pumpkin let out another soft chirp from behind me. Dr. Harper noticed me then. She didn't scold me for wandering. She only glanced at the carrier in my hands. Just a routine checkup for him? She asked. I nodded. What's going to happen to him? I gestured toward the crate. Her shoulders fell a little. His name is Scout. He was brought in after someone found him wandering near a highway. He can't see. We stabilized him, but he's healthy otherwise. Then, quieter, healthy doesn't matter when you can't survive in the wild. Before I could respond, Pumpkin forced the issue for me. He shoved his head against the carrier door, pushing, whining, determined. I barely had time to unclip the latch before he nudged the door open and slipped out. Dr. Harper startled, but Pumpkin wasn't running away. He walked straight toward the crate, tail high, ears forward. Pumpkin, no. I stepped forward, but something in Dr. Harper's expression stopped me. Let him, she whispered. Pumpkin approached Scout's crate slowly, with a confidence that belonged only to creatures who had never questioned their own safety. He sat directly in front of the metal door and let out a long, steady purr, loud enough to fill the whole hallway. Scout froze at first. His lips curled slightly, showing small, sharp teeth. His ears flattened. For a moment I thought I'd made a huge mistake, but then Scout's nose twitched. His head lifted a fraction. He turned toward the sound of Pumpkin's purr as though it were a warm light he could feel but not see. His breathing slowed. The tension along his spine eased. Pumpkin pressed his cheek against the bars. Scout, after a long trembling pause, leaned forward until his forehead touched the metal just opposite Pumpkin's. It wasn't quite an embrace. Steel separated them, but the intention was there. It was fragile, odd, impossible to dismiss. The hallway went silent. Even the dogs in the other room seemed to stop whining. Rick returned just in time to witness it. He blinked, stunned. I've never seen him calm like that, he murmured. Neither had Dr. Harper. Her voice softened. Animals know things we don't. I knelt beside Pumpkin, my chest tight. I didn't know Scout, but the idea of his story ending tonight suddenly felt wrong. Not just sad, wrong. Dr. Harper took a slow breath, weighing something in her mind. Then she turned to me with a look I didn't expect. There's one option, she said quietly. It's not standard. It's a lot of responsibility. But if you're willing to take Scout into temporary home quarantine, I can delay the euthanasia order. I stared at her. I'm not licensed. I've never handled a wild animal. I know, she said gently. But legally, if you agree to house him for a limited period and sign liability waivers, I can keep him off that list. Just for now. It would give us time to search for alternatives. Pumpkin nudged the bars again, purring without pause. Scout leaned closer. Rick folded his arms, uneasy. It's risky. He's still a wild cat. Dr. Harper met my eyes. You don't have to decide now. But by this evening, I need an answer. I looked at Pumpkin, then at Scout. And for the first time that morning, my day no longer felt predictable. It felt like a door cracked open that I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. By the time I said yes, my palms were already sweating. I must have reread the waiver 3 times. It was several pages of small print and heavy words. Liability, risk of injury, no guarantees. At the bottom, there was a line with my name already typed in. All I had to do was sign. Dr. Harper stood beside the counter, hands folded, giving me space. Rick leaned against the wall across from me, arms crossed over his chest. His expression said he had seen people change their minds at the last second. I set Pumpkin's carrier on the chair next to me. He pressed his nose to the door, watching every movement like he knew this decision involved him too. I finally picked up the pen. My signature looked shaky on the first page, steadier on the second. When I was done, Dr. Harper slipped the papers into a folder and let out a breath I didn't realize she had been holding. All right, she said softly. This buys Scout some time. That's all we can promise. Rick pushed off the wall. Just so we're clear, he said, his tone practical, not unkind. He is not a big house cat. He's a bobcat with muscle and claws built to take down rabbits. And, if he's desperate, something bigger. Don't treat him like a pet. I understand, I said, even though part of me absolutely didn't. He'll be stressed, Rick continued. New sounds, new smells. And he can't see where anyone is. Fear and pain make any animal unpredictable, but with him it's multiplied. Keep barriers between you as much as you can. Heavy gloves, crate doors, distance. If you forget that even once, he'll remind you. The way he said it made my neck prickle. We moved to the back of the clinic together. Scout was still in the same rolling crate. When he heard us approach, he curled tighter into himself, ears flicking to track our footsteps. Pumpkin, still in his carrier, let out a quiet trill. Scout's ears turned toward the sound. Dr. Harper sedated him lightly before we moved him, not enough to knock him out completely, but just enough to take the edge off that shaking tension in his muscles. We slid the crate into the back of my small pickup and secured it with straps. Pumpkin's carrier went on the passenger seat. When I shut the tailgate, I had a moment where I just stood there, hand on the metal, staring at the covered crate. This is insane, I thought. You don't bring wildcats home. You drop them off at zoos and nature documentaries, and someone else deals with them. But when I looked through the small front grate of the crate and saw Scout's blind eyes moving randomly in that confined space, it didn't feel like a documentary. It felt like a situation that had landed squarely in my lap. The drive home was short, but every bump sounded too loud. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, even though I could only see the corner of the crate over the tailgate. Pumpkin meowed once and then fell quiet, ears tilted back toward the faint sounds coming from the truck bed. At home, I backed up to the side door that led into my garage. The air smelled like cut grass and motor oil and the lingering warmth of the day trapped in the concrete. I had cleaned the space earlier in the year, but it suddenly felt full of dangers, sharp tools, stacked boxes, things that could fall if a frightened animal slammed into them. Rick helped me unload. He had followed in his own truck in case I lost my nerve halfway. We positioned the crate against the far wall, away from the shelves. I had already shoved an old mattress there, covered it with a thick blanket, and set a heavy ceramic water bowl beside it. A large plastic tub in the corner would have to serve as a litter box, filled with sand I'd grabbed from the hardware store. A temporary metal gate, the kind meant for dogs but reinforced with extra bolts, stood in the doorway leading into the house. The garage door itself stayed closed. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a sanctuary. It was what I could put together in an afternoon. "Keep the layout the same," Rick said, looking around. "He's going to map this space in his head. If you change it every day, he'll crash into everything." Dr. Harper checked the water, the airflow, the latch on the crate. "Talk to him before you move," she reminded me. "Let him know where you are. No surprises." I nodded. It felt strange to think about narrating my steps to a bobcat, but I stored the advice away. We slid the crate door up just enough for Scout to step out if he chose. For a long moment he stayed inside, low and still, like he'd vanished into the shadows under his own ribs. Then, with a small grunt, he moved. He stepped out cautiously, front paws searching, claws slightly extended for traction. His tail stayed low. His head moved in small jerks as he scanned the air for scents and sounds instead of sights. He walked straight into the mattress first, startled by the softness against his chest. He flinched, hissed under his breath, then carefully climbed onto it. His back foot slipped on the blanket. He spun too fast, shoulder clipping the crate with a metallic clang that made all of us jump. Pumpkin watched from his carrier near the door, pupils huge, silent for once. Scout's ears locked onto the noise from the carrier. He hissed once, an automatic warning, then went still as Pumpkin answered with a low, steady purr. The sound filled the space between them like a rope someone had thrown. Scout didn't move toward him, but he didn't lash out either. He turned his head slightly, nostrils flaring, then slowly lowered himself onto the mattress, muscles coiled but no longer shaking. Rick exhaled. "That's better than I expected for day one." He left a small cooler of raw meat and instructions about feeding schedules before he headed back to the shelter. Dr. Harper checked the bandage on Scout's leg one last time, reminded me of emergency numbers, and then she, too, was gone. It was just me, a domestic orange cat, and a blind wild bobcat in my garage. The first night was long. Every sound echoed. The scrape of claws on concrete, the slosh of water in the bowl, my own footsteps as I paced the short hallway between the kitchen and the garage door. I checked the lock on the gate 3 times before midnight. At some point, I lay on the floor inside the house, just on the other side of the gate, listening. Pumpkin lay beside me, pressed against the bars, purring so steadily it felt like background noise. On the other side, I could hear Scout shifting, walking a small circle, bumping lightly into the mattress, adjusting, circling again. "Easy, buddy," I said quietly. "Mattress is at your 12 o'clock. I had no idea if that meant anything to him, but talking helped me as much as it might have helped him. By morning, I had dozed off for short stretches between noises. When sunlight finally slid under the garage door, I made coffee with shaking hands, then pulled on the thickest work gloves I owned. Time for feeding. I set Pumpkin's bowl in the kitchen and closed the interior door so he wouldn't try to sneak through the gate. Then I went back to the garage, carrying a plastic container of thawed meat in one hand and a metal scoop in the other. "Scout," I called softly before I opened the door. "It's Mason. I'm coming in. Food time." His ears swiveled toward my voice. He was curled on the mattress, but as soon as the smell of meat reached him, he lifted his head, nostrils working. I knelt a safe distance away and used the scoop to slide the meat into his bowl. He stood, stepping carefully, whiskers brushing the air. He almost walked past the bowl, then caught the scent and corrected, turning his head just enough to find the edge with his nose. Watching him find it, I felt a mix of admiration and sadness. His eyes looked normal at a glance, but they didn't track movement. When I waved a hand slowly to one side, there was no flicker of focus. His world was built from smell, touch, and the vibrations of the floor through his paws. Inborn or an old injury, Dr. Harper had said back at the clinic. Either way, there's nothing to fix. He ate quickly, head low, shoulders hunched in case someone tried to take the food away. I stayed still, letting him finish. When he was done, he sat, licking his lips, listening for my next move. The water bowl was almost empty from his pacing. I told myself it would be quick. Just swap it, refill it, get out. I grabbed the empty bowl with my left hand. The metal touched the concrete with a louder clank than I intended. In the same second, Scout launched. I didn't see movement so much as feel it, a blur of muscle and fur, a rush of air, and then burning pain across my right wrist. His claws hooked the glove, teeth catching fabric before skin. Instinct made me yank my arm back. The glove ripped. His claws scraped through to my skin in 3 hot lines. I stumbled away, cursing, heart pounding in my throat. Scout spun toward the sound of my retreat, panting, hackles raised. He wasn't attacking to hunt. He was attacking the sudden, loud, unknown thing that had exploded in his small, mapped-out world. Hey, easy, I said, more to myself than to him. That was on me. I backed up until my shoulders hit the inner door. My wrist throbbed. Blood seeped through the torn glove, bright against the yellow fabric. From the kitchen, Pumpkin yowled, upset by the noise. I slipped out of the garage, shut the door, and leaned against it, breathing hard. The adrenaline shook my whole body. In the bathroom, I peeled the glove off with my teeth. The scratches were deep, but not gaping. They ran from the base of my thumb up toward my forearm, angry and red. As I rinsed the blood under cool water, the thought finally landed with full weight. What have you done? I could have called Rick right then and told him to come get Scout. I could have said it was a mistake, that I wasn't prepared, that I had a house cat to think about and neighbors who wouldn't appreciate a wild predator in the garage. Instead, I wrapped my wrist in gauze, taped it clumsily, and went back to the door. On the other side, I heard pacing again. Short, anxious steps, claws clicking lightly. Scout sniffed at the crack, confused by the sudden disappearance of the threat. Pumpkin stared at me from the hallway, tail flicking. He walked to the gate, pressed his face between the bars, and started to purr. The sound bled into the garage. Scout's pacing slowed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Dr. Harper's name lit up the screen. "How's our guest?" she asked. I hesitated. He reminded me that he's a bobcat. That bad? He tagged my wrist when I clanged the bowl. Nothing needing stitches, I think. Just my pride. Her voice softened. "That's exactly why I warned you." Loud, unexpected sounds are landmines for blind animals. You're not the first person he's done that to. I thought about calling Rick, I admitted. And I looked at Pumpkin, still purring at the gate like an engine running on loyalty alone. On the other side, the pacing had almost stopped. And I didn't, I said. She was quiet for a moment. "Listen, Mason. Routine is your friend. Same words, same steps, same timing. Announce yourself. Move slowly. Let him smell what you're doing. He's not trying to be cruel. He's terrified." I sank down to sit on the floor next to the gate. Pumpkin lay beside me, his side pressed against the metal. "Do shelters deal with this a lot?" I asked. "More than anyone wants to admit," she said. "Non-releasable predators are hard. Most facilities don't have space to house them for life, so they make hard choices. You're giving him a pause button instead of a full stop. That matters." After we hung up, I stayed on the floor, listening. Pumpkin visited the gate on his own the rest of that day, lying there for long stretches, purring, sometimes chirping softly. Scout started responding to that sound more than to my voice, positioning himself on the mattress where he could face the gate directly. My wrist ached every time I flexed my hand. Each pulse of pain was a reminder that Scout wasn't a project or a cute internet story waiting to happen. He was a wild animal caught between worlds, and I had walked into that space with him. That night, just as I was cleaning up and considering finally taking a shower, my phone rang again. "Rick, you still alive over there?" he asked, trying for humor. Scratched but breathing, I said. "Good. Then we need to talk about the next step." His tone shifted, more formal. "Because you signed as a temporary caretaker, you're going to get a visit." "A visit from who?" "State Wildlife Inspector," he said. "They'll come by in about a week to see where Scout is staying, check your setup, and make sure no one's in danger. They're the ones who decide if this arrangement continues or if he comes back to us. And if they don't like what they see?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Rick didn't soften it. "Then Scout returns to the shelter. And there's no more extensions after that. Mason, if he comes back, he goes on the schedule." I looked at my bandaged wrist, then at the closed garage door, behind which Scout lay listening to the rhythmic purr of a small orange cat. I swallowed hard. "Then I guess I have 1 week," I said, to convince them he deserves better than a line on a schedule. The week before the inspection felt shorter than any week I could remember. On the first morning after Rick's call, I walked into the garage with a notebook instead of just a scoop and a bowl. If I only had a few days to convince a stranger that Scout could live safely here, I had to treat this like a project, not a vague favor. I stood in the doorway and forced myself to look at the garage the way an inspector might. Sharp-edged tools on the pegboard, boxes stacked high enough to crush something if they tipped, a metal ladder leaning against the wall, a workbench littered with screws and bolts that could roll under unsteady paws. It was a minefield. "Okay, buddy," I said, more to steady myself than anything. "We're remodeling." Scout lay on the mattress, head up, ears tracking my voice. Pumpkin sat just inside the gate, tail curled around his paws, watching. For the next 2 hours, I moved everything that wasn't essential. The drill, the saw, the ladder, half the boxes, all of it went out into the driveway. I slid rubber mats along the walls at hip height, creating a soft border so if Scout misjudged a turn, he'd hit padding instead of hardwood or metal. I taped foam around the edges of the workbench legs. Every time I shifted something, I narrated. "Walking to your right side. Moving the box by the door. Step back, Scout, this one's noisy." It felt ridiculous at first, like I was talking to myself. But I noticed that when I said his name before I moved something loud, Scout tensed less at the sound. Pumpkin trailed me, his claws clicking softly on the concrete, letting out little chirps whenever I crouched. When I finally stepped back, sweaty and dusty, the garage looked bare and strange. It also looked like a space where a blind animal might manage. Over the next days, our routine solidified. Morning, feed Scout, check his water, clean the sand tub. Evening, repeat. In between, I worked from my makeshift office at the kitchen table, taking calls with my headset on while glancing every few minutes at the closed door to the garage. The real changes came from the smallest things. The first time I noticed it, I almost missed it. I had let Pumpkin into the garage after breakfast. The gate still closed so Scout had his side, and Pumpkin had mine. Pumpkin walked along the bars, tail high, purring like a little generator. Scout got up from the mattress, head tilted. Instead of pacing at random, he turned toward the sound of Pumpkin's steps. When Pumpkin moved from the wall near the mattress to the wall near the water bowl, Scout followed, paws feeling the floor, but clearly aligning his path to that gentle, steady purr. He bumped into the water bowl once, snorted, then adjusted his stance until his nose found the rim. Pumpkin waited, sitting a few feet away, watching as Scout drank. It hit me then. He isn't just interested in the cat. He's using him as a kind of moving landmark. An idea I never would have invented on my own started to take shape. Later that day, I set my phone on a shelf and hit record. I opened the door between the kitchen and the garage and let Pumpkin walk in first. His claws clicked softly. Scout's ears turned instantly toward him. I stayed quiet, staying out of the frame, letting the phone capture only the animals. Pumpkin walked toward the mattress. Scout followed. Pumpkin circled once, then hopped up onto the folded blanket at the corner of the mattress, his usual spot. Scout reached the edge of the mattress, hesitated, felt it with one paw, and then climbed up. He stopped when his shoulder brushed Pumpkin's side. Pumpkin didn't flinch. He just purred, loud and even. It was simple, ordinary, if you looked at it one way. But seeing it on the tiny screen afterward, Scout moving confidently in a straight line that matched Pumpkin's path, made my throat tighten. I sent the clip to Dr. Harper. A minute later she called. "You're telling me you didn't stage that?" she asked. "If I had that level of control over either of them, I'd be in the circus," I said. She laughed, then grew serious. "That's remarkable, Mason. His body language is calmer. His tail's lower. This is the most relaxed I've ever seen him outside sedation. I started using some of those words you mentioned," I said. "Stop. Here. Easy." I don't know if he really hears the meaning, but he seems less jumpy when I repeat the same sounds. "Consistency becomes meaning," she said. "Keep it up. And keep recording. Inspectors love evidence." Evidence. The word sounded strange in a context that involved a purring orange cat. That night, after I finished work emails, I watched the clips again. On impulse, I attached one to a post on my small social media account. My friends knew I'd taken in a blind bobcat temporarily. Most had responded with some version of "you're insane" and "please be careful." I typed a caption without overthinking. "My house cat seems to think he's a guide animal. This is Scout, the blind bobcat staying in my garage until we figure out his future." I hit post and put the phone down, figuring a handful of friends would send shocked emojis and dad jokes. By the time I brushed my teeth, the video had a few hundred views. By morning, it had tens of thousands. My notifications were chaos. Comments stacked under the clip faster than I could read them. I made coffee and scrolled with the mug in my good hand. wrists still stiff but healing. People wrote from cities I'd never visited. They sent heart emojis, detailed questions about Scout's health, angry paragraphs about how blind animals shouldn't be euthanized just because they were inconvenient. Some warned me about keeping a wild animal at home. Others offered unsolicited advice on diet and enrichment. Mixed in with the noise were a few messages that stood out. One came from an account tied to a wildlife rehabilitation group in another state. Another from a small sanctuary that specialized in big cats born in captivity. A third, shorter than the rest, caught my eye because it sounded less like a random comment and more like a field report. Hi, Mason. My name is Brooke. I coordinate mammal care at a state wildlife park a couple hours from you. We run a limited program for non-releasable animals with disabilities. Space is extremely tight, but your video was shared in our staff chat. Could we talk? I didn't answer immediately. I saved the message, screenshotted it, and sat staring at the wall. Brooke represented exactly what Scout needed. A legal, long-term home where he wouldn't be a pending case file. But space is extremely tight, echoed the words I'd already heard from Rick about his own facility. What if there was a slot, and he didn't pass whatever criteria they used? What if there wasn't a slot at all, and all this hope just made the eventual decision harder to live with? Before I could spiral too far, Pumpkin brushed against my leg, reminding me that there were things to do right now. My days became a series of repetitions. Morning feeding, gentle verbal cues, phone calls squeezed between work tasks, and litter box cleaning. Stop, I'd say when Scout got too close to a wall, holding one hand up even though he couldn't see it. Easy, Scout. Step left. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes he clipped the wall anyway, snorting in irritation and shaking his head. But little by little, he stopped sprinting blindly when startled and started freezing first to listen. Pumpkin almost never missed a session. If I opened the door and forgot to invite him, he'd call from the hallway until I let him in. He walked calm, predictable paths, mattress to bowl, bowl to gate, gate back to mattress. Scout's paws learned those paths, too. One afternoon, while I filmed from the doorway, Pumpkin did something new. He jumped up on the mattress, then hopped down and padded slowly to the water bowl, tail twitching. Scout followed until his whiskers touched Pumpkin's back. When Pumpkin stopped, Scout stopped. When Pumpkin stepped aside, Scout turned his head toward the bowl, waiting inches from his nose. I felt a tightness in my chest that wasn't fear this time. That night, I answered Brooke. We arranged a call for the following day. She sounded tired but sharp, the kind of person used to juggling animals, staff, and budgets in the same hour. She asked specific questions: Scout's approximate age, behavior around food, reaction to new sounds. When I mentioned the pending inspection, she went quiet. I wish I could promise you a spot, she said finally. We've got one enclosure that might be suitable, but I need to talk to my director, and we'd have to evaluate Scout in person first. We usually prioritize animals injured in state. Out-of-county transfers like this are tricky. Tricky how? I asked. Paperwork, funding, politics, she said. The usual. But your little orange friend may have done him a favor. Public support helps when we're arguing for exceptions. Public support. My phone buzzed again with new notifications as if to underline her words. All of it would have been exciting if not for the ticking deadline. Every calendar reminder about meetings at work now sat beside a mental alarm labeled inspection. I went to bed thinking about it and woke up measuring the distance between Scout's mattress and every corner of the garage. The day before the inspector was due, my neighbor from across the street caught me in the driveway while I was hauling another box out to the shed. She squinted toward the closed garage door. Everything okay over there, Mason? She asked. We've been hearing noises. My stomach dropped. Noises? Like a cat, but bigger, she said. And that crying sound in the middle of the night. My husband thought it was a fox stuck in something. That's Scout, I said carefully. I'm looking after a blind bobcat for the wildlife folks while they figure out a permanent place for him. Her eyes widened. A bobcat? In your garage? I rushed to add, he's contained. There's a state inspection coming. It's temporary. She folded her arms, clearly uncomfortable. Well, I hope temporary means very temporary. We have grandkids visit on weekends. And the smell? She wrinkled her nose. It drifts over when the wind is wrong. I apologized, promised I was doing everything I could to keep things clean and safe. But as she walked away, the tight knot of doubt in my chest cinched another notch. It wasn't just about Scout and me. Other people lived near this experiment, people who hadn't signed any waivers. That night, after cleaning the sand tub and double-bagging the trash, I sat beside the gate with Pumpkin in my lap. Scout lay stretched on the mattress, head turned toward us, breathing slow. "You okay in there?" I asked him quietly. His ear twitched once. Pumpkin shifted, pressing harder against the metal, purring like always. For a moment, in the dim light, I imagined Scout as he must see us, a blur of sounds, scents, vibrations. No faces, no colors, just patterns. The morning of the inspection came with a gray sky and a heaviness in the air that matched my mood. I had cleaned the garage twice, retaped any loose foam, laid out my documents on the kitchen table, waivers, veterinary records, printed emails from Rick and Dr. Harper. They looked official enough to almost convince me I knew what I was doing. The inspector arrived right on time. He was taller than me, with a weathered face and a state badge clipped to his belt. He introduced himself as Harris, shook my hand, and glanced briefly at the bandage still wrapped around my wrist. "Part of the learning curve?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. He didn't smile. We started in the kitchen. He asked how often I interacted with Scout, what emergency plans I had, whether my insurance company knew about the arrangement. He read the waiver I'd signed, nodded once, and made notes on his clipboard. Then we went to the garage. I opened the door slowly, announcing us the way I'd learned to do. "Scout, it's Mason, coming in with a guest." Scout lifted his head, ears swiveling. Pumpkin, already by the gate because he'd sensed the change in tone, flicked his tail. Harris stayed back at first, scanning the room with a practiced eye. He checked the gate, the condition of the walls, the improvised padding. He walked the perimeter, testing the sturdiness of each anchor point with his hand. "Where do you feed him?" he asked. I pointed to the heavy bowl by the wall. "Same spot each time." "And that mattress?" "His primary resting place," I said. "I don't move it." He nodded slowly, jotting something down. Pumpkin had gone quiet during the inspection, as if he sensed he shouldn't steal the spotlight. But as Harris turned to look at Scout directly, Pumpkin broke the silence. He walked forward to the gate, rubbed his cheek against the bottom bar, and began to purr. Scout turned toward the sound instantly. He got to his feet, stretched once, and padded across the mattress to the side closest to us. His movements were careful, but not frantic. When he reached the edge, he stopped, facing the gate head-on, nose lifting to catch Pumpkin's familiar scent. Pumpkin pressed his body against the bars, one paw slipping lazily through the gap and resting on the concrete inside. Scout leaned forward until his whiskers brushed that paw. Then he sat, tail wrapped loosely around his feet, body language loose in a way I was pretty sure only I and the other animal people in the room could fully appreciate. Harris watched the whole interaction without speaking. "That's the domestic?" he asked quietly. "Pumpkin," I said. He made another note. "And the Bobcat has never attempted to break the barrier?" "Not since the first day, when everything in here was new," I said. "He startles if I make loud noises, but he's calmer when I talk and when Pumpkin's around." Harris studied Scout for a long moment. The Bobcat's blind eyes didn't track him, but his ears followed every small motion we made. Finally, Harris stepped back into the hall. I followed, closing the door halfway so Scout could settle again. "Here's the situation," he said. "I can see you've taken precautions. The padding, the routine, the separation from living spaces, that all works in your favor. The animal appears calm in your presence. That works in your favor too." My heartbeat climbed with each neutral phrase. "But," he continued, "state guidelines are clear. Private homes aren't designed for permanent housing of large predators, even smaller species like bobcats. This is a temporary arrangement, at best." "I know," I said quietly. That's all I agreed to. He looked down at his clipboard, then back at me. "You mentioned a potential placement at a wildlife park. A coordinator named Brooke reached out," I said. "We've talked, but nothing's guaranteed." He considered that, then wrote something else. "All right," he said finally. "Here's what I'm going to recommend. You have 1 month to secure an approved facility willing to take this animal. During that time, this setup stays as it is or improves. No cutting corners, no weakening barriers. I'll file this as a conditional extension." My throat felt tight. "And if I can't find a place?" Harris didn't dodge the question. "Then Scout returns to the shelter under Rick's authority. At that point, the state's standard euthanasia protocol would apply." The words settled between us like something heavy and cold. He offered his hand again. You've already done more for that animal than most people ever would. Use the month wisely. After he left, the house felt too quiet. I went back to the garage and sat by the gate. Pumpkin curled beside me almost immediately, purring as if nothing important had just happened. Scout shifted on the mattress, turning toward us. For a moment, I let myself rest my bandaged wrist against the bars, feeling the faint vibration of Pumpkin's purr travel through metal and into the concrete. 1 month, I said softly, mostly to myself. We've got 1 month to find you a home. Scout flicked an ear, as if he'd heard and filed the words away, even if he didn't understand them. Pumpkin just kept purring, steady and sure, as if there was never any doubt at all. By the end of the month, my calendar felt like a countdown. Every reminder was about Scout, calls, emails, paperwork. 3 days before the deadline, Brooke phoned. The park had one open enclosure for animals with special needs, but Scout had to be evaluated in person. If we could bring him that weekend, he'd get his chance. Dr. Harper helped prep him for transport, a reinforced crate, his blanket for scent, and a light sedative. Pumpkin rode up front with me. Rain hit as soon as we left the clinic, the highway a blur of gray water and truck noise. Scout panicked once, scraping at the crate until Pumpkin's loud meowing steadied him. After that, the rhythm of the road carried us the rest of the way. At the park gates, the world shifted into fenced paths and forest smells. Brooke and 2 staff members helped unload Scout. Pumpkin stayed by my side in his carrier. The special enclosure was simple: low platforms, ramps, wide doorways, built for animals who couldn't rely on full mobility. Inside the den area, we positioned Scout's crate near the back corner. Pumpkin's purring filled the room. When I opened the crate, Scout stepped out carefully, mapping the floor with unsure paws. A distant animal call and clanging gate sent him spiraling, running into walls, ricocheting off the doorway, slamming into the crate. Bring Pumpkin closer, Brooke said. I set his carrier against the mesh. Pumpkin's purr deepened into a steady vibration. Scout froze, ears locked on the sound, then edged toward the mesh. He pressed his face lightly to the barrier, breath slowing. Within minutes, he sat calmly, tail around his paws, blind eyes angled toward us. Brooke watched, impressed. This is better than most first entries, she said. He has a chance here. Outside, she explained the terms. If Scout adapted, no self-injury, stable behavior, responding to staff, he could stay permanently. My relief lasted only a second before I asked the question I dreaded. And Pumpkin? Brooke shook her head. Companion animals weren't allowed in the carnivore area except during controlled visits. Pumpkin could come for supervised sessions, but he couldn't live there. Scout needed to build independence, not rely on a cat who couldn't always be present. She handed me intake papers. If you sign, Scout becomes our resident. No more euthanasia list. A soft rustle came from inside the enclosure. Scout moving again, slower now, oriented. Pumpkin answered with a steady purr. For the first time since meeting that terrified, blind Bobcat in the clinic, the future didn't feel like a deadline. It felt like a door finally opening, one that required choosing how much of my life, and Pumpkin's, I was willing to reshape to keep it open. A few weeks later, the trips to the park settled into a rhythm. I'd load Pumpkin into his carrier, drive the same highway, and watch him perk up as we neared the familiar turnoff. Staff greeted us with easy nods. Scout was no longer a file on a desk, but part of their daily schedule. His name appeared on the whiteboard with notes. Ate well, calm today, responded to Q. From outside the mesh, I watched him move with growing confidence. What once were tight circles near the den door had become wider, purposeful routes, steps counted, platforms memorized, corners mapped by habit. Pumpkin had his own ritual, sitting on the same rock, purring softly as Scout passed, pausing only briefly to angle his blind gaze our way before continuing. He needed us less each week, and though it hurt, it also felt right. One icy morning the drive was rough. Roads shimmered like glass, and I gripped the wheel the whole way. Brooke met us at the gate and led us straight to Scout's enclosure. He waits for your truck every time, she said. We set up in our usual spots. Brooke gave a quiet command. Scout, stop. Scout, den. And he followed her voice with calm precision, brushing the doorway once, but correcting smoothly. He wasn't relying on me or Pumpkin now. He was learning the people and patterns of his new home. Driving back later, The question I'd avoided finally formed. Was I coming for him or for myself? Scout had keepers he recognized, routines he trusted, territory he understood. Pumpkin tolerated the trips, but came home exhausted every time. Our last visit of the season answered everything. Pumpkin didn't rush to the mesh. He simply sat back, watching. Scout passed our corner, paused at the familiar sounds, then continued on, steady, relaxed, choosing open space over clinging to our side. "You seeing this?" I whispered. Pumpkin's soft purr felt like agreement. Scout didn't need a guide anymore, at least not every week. On the drive home, Pumpkin asleep, I said it out loud. Maybe we visit less. Let him be the resident and us the visitors. The thought was bittersweet, but honest. Scout wasn't the terrified Bobcat from the clinic anymore. He'd grown into a blind animal with a stable territory, people who checked on him daily, and a life measured in routines instead of deadlines. None of this had been guaranteed. All we'd done was give him a chance, and it had been enough. Back home, the garage was just a garage again. I lifted Pumpkin, held him for a moment, and whispered, "We did okay." He nudged my chin, jumped down, and trotted toward the kitchen. And somewhere hours away, Scout was finding his way through familiar ground on his own, exactly as he should. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories. And now just click the playlist or the next video on your screen.